It was July 1996 when a family of four landed in Los Angeles from Dresden, Germany. Two parents, 34-year-old 𝗣𝗥𝗢𝗧𝗘𝗖𝗧 and 27-year-old Cornelia Meyer. They had with them two children, the man's 11-year-old son, George, and the woman's 4-year-old son, Max. They were all road tripping across the American Southwest. They were in a rented green Plymouth Voyager minivan. They were hitting Disneyland, Las Vegas, the Grand Canyon. For them, this was the trip of a lifetime, but they weren't finished. On July 22nd, they checked out of a hotel in Las Vegas. The next stop, Death Valley, one of the hottest, most dangerous places on Earth. Now, they weren't reckless. They marked up their maps. They had their snacks. They had water. They had a camera. This was just supposed to be a photo stop on their way to Yosemite. But somewhere between Badwater Basin, things went wrong. They veered off the paved road. They took a dirt track into a part of the desert most locals wouldn't drive in daylight, especially not in July. And that's where they disappeared. So what the hell happened? This is Death National Park. The discovery started with a phone call from Germany. It was the man's ex-wife, the mother of the 11-year-old son, George, who was trying to reach them. They were supposed to check in. They were supposed to send word from the road on what was going on. They were ultimately supposed to catch their return flight home, but she hadn't heard a thing. Now, at first it felt like a missed call, a mix-up, or a flight delay, but then she started freaking out. Days passed. More and more, she's hearing nothing. No one has seen them. No one has heard from them. And then the missing report was filed. Search efforts begin, but the desert is huge. For weeks, there were no sightings, no tips. It took over 3 months, but on October 21st, 1996, a small aircraft flying over Death Valley National Park spotted something. A minivan, just sitting there, sun-bleached, abandoned, no broken glass, no bodies, no obvious crash, just a van wedged into a dry wash like it had been swallowed in the desert. Now, let's look at this map. This is Anvil Canyon, where the van was found. Not near a trail, not near a scenic overlook, not even on a marked road. If you zoom out, it's 20 miles from the nearest highway, 2 miles off the last usable dirt road. And this entire stretch, it's restricted. Vehicles aren't even allowed here. So how did a rental van with no off-road tires, no clearance, that's for sure, end up that deep in the backcountry? Inside the van, rangers did find a few clues. There was an empty water jug. There were some maps, both local and touristy, a German to English dictionary, ticket stubs from Las Vegas and other destinations that they had been on. But there was no keys. There was no wallets, there was no clothing, and no sign of the 4 people who rented it. Nothing. Silence, heat, sand. And then that's when the theories started. Investigators were trying to piece together what went wrong. It turns out that the family had circled the place in their Death Valley guidebook, a ghost town, Butte Valley. They thought that they could make a loop, a scenic route through that desert before heading back. But they didn't realize that the road they chose wasn't a road at all. It was more than 20 miles of unmaintained, rock-strewn, tire-chewing terrain, and in a 2-wheel drive minivan in July in 120-degree heat, it wasn't going to work. Now, they actually made it most of the way. They got stuck, though. They spun their tires. They tried to dig themselves out, but it dug them deeper. And that's when they made the most chilling decision of all. They left the van. They tried to walk out. No hiking gear, almost no water. Of course, no cell phone. This was 1996, just a map in the sun and miles of desert in every direction. You know, they were city tourists. They weren't survivalists. They had kids. They had just stepped out into one of the most unforgiving landscapes on Earth, and no one knew where they were. They vanished in the summer of 1996, and for over a decade, their story was nothing more than a headline, a mystery of Death Valley National Park. until November 12th, 2009. Two hikers, Tom Mahood and Les Walker, headed deep into the backcountry. Now, they had studied this case for years. They knew the terrain. They knew the van location. And they had a theory about the path that they thought the family would most likely have taken after abandoning it. That morning, they pushed through the rocky wash near Goler Wash Road. They moved southeast past the van's location in Anvil Canyon and into an area so remote it barely shows up on maps. And then, on a small rise above a dry riverbed, they found it. A human bone, sun-bleached, fragile, out in the open. They freeze. They scan the ground, and suddenly they start seeing more skeletal fragments scattered across the rock. Bits of a skull, a femur, a vertebrae. Nearby, the sole of a child's shoe and what looks like the faded fabric of a jacket. Tattered, sun-worn, unraveling in the wind. They keep moving forward. Roughly half a mile away, they find another cluster. More bones, a wallet. Inside, the German passport of Cornelia Meyer. Soon after, investigators arrive and confirm it. Cornelia Meyer, identified through personal documents and remains. 𝗤𝗢𝗡𝗧𝗏 skeletal remains found nearby, confirmed by proximity and context. George Weber and Max Mayer, the children, were never definitively found. Now, some, of course, speculate that the small shoe and scattered child-sized fragments may have belonged to one of the children, but no conclusive identification was ever made. Just pieces of a family left behind in the desert, scattered across a 2-mile radius. You can only imagine their final hours of their lives have been spent crawling, searching, breaking apart one by one. Now, the saddest part about all of this is that they were just 1.7 miles away from a Stone Ranger cabin. It was stocked with emergency water and supplies, but they didn't know it. They couldn't see it, and they never made it. In 2009, the case was officially closed, and no additional remains have ever been found. The truth is, innocent people end up in true crime stories every day. Don't let it be you. Get the Protect Yourself toolkit below. Now, keep the true crime binge watching going. Click here to watch the next story, which has got more twists than you're ready for.